Conservatives, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And quickly, you described as being independent, arm's length. I've been on C10, C11, C18, so we've heard ministers say that a number of times. So I've got the ATIP question, and you said that you did not send information to the minister. You said that a few minutes ago. So be careful, because I have information here. So they sent it to you then, because I know what they sent. I know went back and forth. So when it talks about media lines, I know what those are. So they sent them to you then. You didn't send them to them, you said. So they sent them to you.
Again, there is some exchange of communications materials.
You said you didn't send them to them, then they sent them to you, media lines, right?
I don't know what
I do.
media lines.
I do. I've got it here, and I've got the information, so I know. So be careful.
But again, if information is shared for information, then that happens through communications, and it's not for comment.
So they sent it to you. You said you didn't send it to them, so they then sent those media lines to you. Thank you.
I don't
Moving
know if
on,
any media lines
I've
were
got other
sent.
questions to ask.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
I can move on. I can move to my next question.
You can move on, but you asked a
Thank
question.
you.
We should hear the answer.
She said
She asked to be able to answer the question.
she gave me the answer. You also, thank you. So Scott, you said
Point of order, Madam
needed.
Chair. The witness was asked a question and was not afforded the opportunity to respond.
I did make that point, and
Thank
I
you.
think the witness should be able to respond. The chair decides who responds and who speaks. Go ahead.
Point of order. Point of order.
Yes, Mrs. Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. If you seek clarity from the clerk, I believe that you will find that the members of this committee have the ability to make a statement should they wish to, or ask a question. If my colleague chose to make a statement, that is his prerogative.
Well, it sounded like a question, but there you go. If it's
Point
a
of order.
statement, is it a statement, Mr. Shields?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move ahead.
Thank you. So
No,
Moving
I
on,
think
I have the floor.
he made a
Point of
statement. He
order.
has the floor.
Point
We
of
continue.
order.
Someone else. There's
was,
another opportunity. Someone can
Point of order, Madam
clarify
Chair.
that.
It wasn't a statement. It was an accusation, and the witnesses should be allowed to respond
Sorry,
if they
Kevin, point of order,
choose
please.
to. If they choose not to respond, that's their prerogative, but they should be given the opportunity to respond.
That's just not true.
thank you, Madam Chair. Moving on. You made the statement, if needed. Now, there's a phrase out there that says, I'm here from the government, I'm here to help you. That's an oxymoron in my writing. Very scary. So if you ask, if needed, right, you stated, you're collecting that information if needed, right?
Yes, I did say that, yeah.
What does if needed mean?
If needed in this case means we have a broad mandate to look at the broadcasting system in Canada. We're at the front end of this. The question was raised, does podcasting impact the broadcasting system in Canada? We have no specific questions about it right now. We've preserved the ability to contact large companies that distribute podcasts in the future if needed. I don't see this as particularly controversial to say that there are elements of the broadcasting system we need to be in touch with if we develop policies. We have no policies regarding podcasts on the table at the moment.
But you're saying that if needed.
Yes, absolutely. We're a quasi-judicial tribunal, and I can't speak to a theoretical for the future.
But you're setting it up for that as a registration, basically, because you're saying, if needed, we will need your contact information.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. One of the things you said is that you're collecting information on what is Canadian attitudes, opinions, ideas, and values, right? You're collecting information, and the documentation says that's what you're collecting information about.
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're referring to.
When you're out there engaging, you're looking for Canadian values, Canadian, what are Canadians in podcasting?
My apologies, I'm not sure which document you are referring to. If you're referring to the registration consultation as a whole, we could address that, but I apologize, I'm not aware of the context of your question.
Okay, I'll move to the next one. You're talking about connectivity and the word "the last community." Is that a phrase I've heard today, getting to the last community?
That's not a phrase that I use.
But I heard that you, from one of you, saying getting the internet connected to the last community.
To remote, rural, and Indigenous communities?
It's the last community. To the last farm gate is where it needs to be. I'm going to turn the time over to my colleague.
There's 25 seconds from Mrs. Thomas. 20 now.
I just need a mic. Thank you, Chair. At this point in time, I'll be moving a motion. And I, of course, those around this committee table understand that there is only so much time where we are in public and where we have the opportunity to move a motion that we feel is of great importance. As other parties have done, I will take this opportunity. I recognize that we have a witness here, and so I'm happy to move the motion, make a statement, and then we can move to a vote quickly if we wish. The motion is as follows.
Order, Madam Chair. Last time the CRTC was here, we had a filibuster from the Conservatives that blocked the CRTC for testifying for
This
over an
isn't a
hour.
point of order.
And this time, we have another hour
Point of
where
order?
the CRTC
I must
is available.
listen to what the member is saying before I can rule on whether
Are
it's
you
a
yelling
point
at
of
me?
order or not. I'm not, pardon?
Are you yelling at me?
So,
No, I'm just trying to speak over you because you continue to speak. Mr. Julian has the floor. He has a point of order.
As do
the,
I.
the last,
Mr. Julian,
the
go ahead.
last time, I note that the last time the CRTC appeared, the Conservatives blocked for over an hour their ability to testify, cutting short our time to ask questions. It appears the Conservatives are doing the same thing this time. That what they want to do is curtail the witnesses and the important questions. I still have many questions to ask the CRTC. I'm very glad they're here. But that's 2 consecutive appearances now where the Conservatives are trying to block the CRTC from responding to our questions. And I believe that that's inappropriate. And again, the Conservatives blocking the CRTC from answering these questions, not in the public interest. So.
Yes, Ms.
Chair, I've tried to remain quiet while Mr. Julian continues to impugn the motives of the Conservative members of this committee. I think Mrs. Thomas was clear that she understands we have witnesses. We only have them for an hour, as far as I know, and that we're at the end of that time, and she's going to quickly move a motion, which I think is not going to take very much time. So it's not a filibuster, and I wish Mr. Julian would quit
I would like to point
mischaracterizing.
out, however, that we have not finished the questions. There's one other question to be left to be asked by the Liberal member. And so I think that is cutting short the questions we're asking the CRTC. So I think Mr. Julian has a point of order. You have responded to it. But I do think it would be nice to have the last question asked.
Madam Chair, I understand that the motion that we were considering at the last meeting will not be moved because we have some resolution around the appearance of the Minister of Sport. So I would ask you to ask our witnesses if they're prepared to stay for another hour, because that would give us more opportunity to fully ask the questions that we have to ask of the CRTC.
That would be out of order because the agenda says that there is only 1 hour. I have stretched the hour because I did want to have everyone have a chance to ask a question of the CRTC. And what we've done is we've suggested that one of the questioners shouldn't ask a question by Ms. Thomas moving. She could wait until the questioner asked a question and then go ahead and move the motion. She has the time to do it if she wishes. And so I would like to see a bit of respect and fairness on this committee so that we don't treat some members of this committee as if they have no authority, no options, and no ability to be involved in the game. Mr. Cotto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I move a motion to move into camera?
No, because there's
No, you
already a
can't.
motion on the floor.
You cannot. There's a motion on the floor already.
Madame la Présidente, un rappel au
I
règlement
am,
pour
I
moi
am
aussi.
asking Ms. Thomas if she would allow
Un rappel au
and a
règlement.
point of respect. Sorry.
A point of order, Mr. Shampoo. Thank you. I think there was an interesting issue relating to courtesy raised by Mr. Julian to see if our guests can stay a little longer, because in any case, we are going to get caught up in a lengthy debate on the motion. So if our guests can stay, we hope to move quickly. But if they cannot stay an additional hour, I think it would be right to thank them, and they can leave us. So even if I don't really agree with the idea that we prevent our Liberal colleagues from asking their questions, if we are strictly to follow the rules, Madam Chair, our colleague, Ms. Thomas, is right to raise the motion right now.
And I have acknowledged that, but I'm asking her to just allow, if she could, out of respect, to have one more question asked of another member of this committee.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Both myself and Mr. Shampoo have asked that if you could ask the witnesses if they're prepared to stay longer.
Well, to ask them that, I would need to have consent from the whole committee that they want to do that. We do have a motion on the floor that we have to deal with. And so all I'm trying to do is get us back in on order and say, can Ms. Thomas, before she moves her motion, or can she postpone it while Mr. Nur Mohammed asks his question? Because he is now, the Liberals have now been cut short of one question in this round. And that's all I'm asking. Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I believe that this committee is familiar with the rules, and of course I can only move a motion when I have the floor. I only have the floor when it's my opportunity to ask a question. So as much as your chastising is taken to heart, Ms. Chair, with respect, it's wrong to imply that I have the opportunity at the end of the question rounds. I do not. The rules of this committee state that I only have the opportunity to move a motion when I have the floor.
I acknowledge that, Ms. Thomas.
I
So
have
I'm
the floor right
asking-
now, and I wish to move a motion.
So, and I would like to finish what I'm saying. I'm asking you to just make a say, let Mr. Mohammed come. My motion is still on the floor, and I will turn to you because the motion will be on the floor. That's all I'm asking. But there you go. You don't want to see that, so we will deal with Ms. Thomas's motion. Yes, Mr. Cueto.
Then suggest, considering we had the witnesses for 1 hour and it's now 15 minutes past the scheduled time, that we just we finish with the witnesses and
Yes.
we'll forget about our question then, if that's the
Yes,
case.
I will do that. I was
Yeah.
about to do that because Ms. Thomas has got the ability to move a motion, and it's on the floor now. So I want to thank the witnesses for coming and answering questions. So I'm sorry that we kept you a little longer than you should have been, and I know you may have other things to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the
Yes.
opportunity.
Thank you. And so we will
Point of
continue.
order.
Mr. Newman,
Point of order. Madam Chair, it is disappointing that the Conservatives have chosen to cast aspersions and then deny the Liberals and the Democrats and the Bloc the opportunity to ask questions of the witnesses and to take that time up.
Madam Chair.
And it yet
Madam
again
Chair.
reflects that there is no real interest in
of
doing
order.
the committee's work of the committee.
It's a point of order being. I need to listen to it to know if it's a point of order
Just
or
make
not,
sure the
Mrs.
rules are
Thomas.
applied fairly on
I'm
this
sorry,
side,
Mrs.
then.
Thomas. I need
Oh,
to
so
listen
aggressive.
to know whether I can rule if it's a point of order or not. I'm trying to listen. Sorry, Mr. Nur Mohammed, go ahead.
And so just for future, Madam Chair, I'm wondering if we can ensure that when we are doing the rounds of questions, that we can ensure that there's enough time to complete the rounds so that everybody would have that opportunity. I mean, looking at the clock, it would have seemed that even if we had finished with Ms. Thomas's, there may have been 1 minute left, even if we had delayed for 5 minutes for us and no time for Mr. Shampoo or Mr.
Nur
Julian.
Mohammed, I think we have already dismissed the witnesses, thanked them,
Yeah,
and now we're dealing with Mrs. Thomas's
Just a point of
motion, which she's absolutely correct that she had the opportunity only when she was having the floor. She did have the floor. She moved a motion. We have to deal with it. Sorry, Kevin.
A point of clarification. The Bloc and the NDP were done their
They have
questioning.
already spoken.
They were done their questioning. They were done 2.5 minutes. We had a point of a motion here, and this is the procedure. But the bloc, Mr. Noor Mohammed said the bloc and the NDP had another round of questioning. They didn't.
Well, so I stand corrected, Mr. Waugh. I stand corrected. So it was really only us.
This is
so
not
I
a debate. I'm sorry. This is not a debate.
So you scored your point. That's great.
Point of order.
Mr. Noor Mohammed is absolutely.
Point of order.
Sorry,
Point of order.
Mr.
Point of order.
Mr. Waugh is correct.
Point of order.
Sorry.
Point of order. Madam Chair, as I indicated and Mr. Champoux indicated, the CRTC was prepared to stay longer, given how at the last time they appeared, the Conservatives blocked their full committee hearing. I was hoping for the courtesy of allowing further questions to the CRTC. They were prepared to stay, and we had far more questions. So Mr. Noor Mohammed is absolutely right. The NDP and I believe Mr. Champoux had a lot more questions to ask of the CRTC in the public interest.
Well, the decision has been made. Ms. Thomas had a motion on the floor. She had the floor and could make the motion, and we now have to move forward. Mr. Thomas, your motion.
Thank you, Chair. The motion that I wish to move is as follows. Given that the Department of Canadian Heritage, under the leadership of the Honourable Pablo Rodriguez, approved anti-racism grants upwards of $130,000 to Laith Maroof of the Community Media Advocacy Centre, CMAC, on October 21st, 2022, the Honourable Pablo Rodriguez appeared before the Heritage Committee, during which time he was asked by a number of members of Parliament about the date he was made aware of Laith Maroof's derogatory remarks about Jews and Francophones, and the Minister reported to the committee that he was not informed until after August 22nd, 2022. And given that an article by the Globe and Mail and an access to information request indicate emails circulated from the former Diversity and Inclusion Minister, the Honourable Ahmed Hussein, his former Chief of Staff, Minister Rodriguez's former Chief of Staff, and the Deputy Minister of Canadian Heritage between August 17th and August 19th, 2022, including one sent to Minister Rodriguez's personal email account titled Laith Maroof and Anti-Semitic Hate Speech. The committee invite the former Minister for Canadian Heritage, the Honourable Pablo Rodriguez, to appear before the committee as soon as possible for no fewer than 2 hours to clarify his remarks concerning Laith Maroof, and that the committee report its findings to the House. To the committee through you, Chair. The reason why this motion is important is because the members here will recall the former Minister of Heritage, Mr. Pablo Rodriguez, was brought before this committee and asked questions with regards to Laith Maroof's hiring and as to when the minister was made aware of Laith Maroof's anti-Semitic behavior and conduct on social media platforms. And the minister told this committee that he did not find out until it was announced in the media. But we have an ATIP that actually shows that the minister was made aware through an email to his P9 account. And that email was sent between August 17th and August 19th, before things broke in the media. And that email was titled Laith Maroof and Anti-Semitic Hate Speech. That's pretty clear. That's a pretty clear indication to the minister that there's a problem. And so the minister either misled this committee or didn't do his job with great competency. I'd like to give him the opportunity to clarify which one is it. And so in order to give him that opportunity to clarify, he would need to come to this committee and give us the opportunity to ask questions. Hence, the motion that I have put on the table today, which asks for him to come for no fewer than 2 hours, so that we would be able to finally, hopefully, I guess, get to the bottom of this and understand what took place here. I mean, after all, $130,000 were given by the Heritage Department to a raging anti-Semite and someone who also rages against Francophones. And in that $130,000 was given to him to run anti-racism training. It's insane. It is the definition of insanity. And so it is incumbent upon the minister to come to this committee and to answer questions that we have with regard to what happened. And further to that, to answer questions with regard to when he knew about Laith Marouf and his horrible conduct, incredibly vile remarks. And further to that, this is an individual who continues to make these remarks. And this is an individual who is supposed to pay back the $130,000 now that it's been brought to the government's attention by the official opposition. However, more than 9 months have passed since that was demanded of him, and not a single dime has been paid back. That's a problem. And so I'm curious as to how the minister, the former minister, would justify what has happened here. And the only way that that can be, I guess, settled is for the minister to have the opportunity to come here and to clarify former remarks that he made that now seem to be falsehoods, and to clarify as to why this decision was made with 130,000 Canadian taxpayer dollars. That's my motion. Consider it moved.